Righto, old chap. This is a thorough bad bloody accent of Australia. Crikeys, I've got a rather good rise out of it, and I'm totally blistering it. So, bloody good. Don't have it, and I'm totally using really rotten English, is it? Here at Fight for Freedom Radio, I'm just totally going to screw around with the accent because I can't bloody friggin' get it. Never mind. Alright, so tonight we're going to do a new episode, and it is designated towards Kirsty and Australia. And Australia is quite an interesting little country because, well, it just is. I mean, freaking crazy, you know what I mean? A new song we've never played. Are we ready? Let's do it. That's not it. I'm mad. Sorry. My bad. Now. Ladies and gentlemen, that was the Australian National Anthem. I'm going to make a short episode about tonight for Australia because I don't know a whole lot. There's going to be a lot of changes coming up that y'all are going to need to get used to. I'm going to start changing our website to give out a lot more information on our allies as well, just so you know. Now, that being said, let me tell you a little bit about Australia. There is a dark and foreboding place where few men dare tread, and where those who do tread speak with indecipherable accents. A place that will destroy your Christian soul and be left unquenched, sitting there silently, taunting your soul's swollen mind with his maddening silence. There's no way that such a hellish fiendish nexus of agony could exist, but it does, and the reason I say this is because of all the stuff that's on the island. It's Australia. Not the home of the kangaroo or crocodile Dundee, you say? Well, yes, actually, it is. Granted, it was originally a prison colony for the British. The British, though, have an idea of rapscallions, and the fact that this land was designated as a death trap so that aristocrats could go back to their polo games in peace says something about the assumed lethality of this place. That lethality is more than just an assumption. Out of the intelligently designed cruelty of some person, Australia has the largest concentration of venomous, aggressive, and black-hearted creatures on Earth. The box jellyfish, for example, is the most ruthless, terrifying, and pants-shitting evil killer of men. Some people die as soon as 4 minutes after being stung, and it lives offshore. The Sydney funnel web spider, whose bite can cause permanent open sores if it doesn't just kill you outright, and whose temperament, unlike most cowardly spiders, actually compels them to actively pursue you and repeatedly bite you, calls Australia home. The Australian death adder, well, shit, why do you think they named it that? The saltwater crocodile, none other than the largest reptile on Earth, guess where he dwells? If you're bold enough about water to still take baths, I doubt that smug look of non-terror on your face would remain if you knew that the horror that is the blue-ringed octopus frequents all coasts around the continent. The LD50 of his venom, as in the amount of substance that will kill you 50% of the test subjects, is so high that a single dose is enough to kill 20 grown men. The Australian jumper ant, responsible for over 90% of their emergency anaphylactic shocks, is so sadistic and predatory that it actually been known to wait on tree branches to ambush people below. Even the plants are screwed up in Australia. Known as only the stinging tree, this spawn of Satan looks deceptively innocuous. It's a mild-mannered looking thing that merely is covered with tiny hairs, but the slightest touch has been known to instantly kill rodents within a day, paralyze dingoes and dogs, and cause excruciating pain to humans. I mean, shit. Seeding the land with enormous reptilian carnivores, holocaustic insects is bad enough, but disguising certain agony and death as a little tree is truly a hallmark trait of psychopathic geniuses. Then there's the platypus. He deserves his own paragraph because of how much of a deceiver he is. He lulls you into complacency because his neurotoxic spurs don't directly kill humans most of the time. Don't be fooled. You'd beg for death when he gets over. All human victims of the platypus sting suffer immediate hyperalgesia, basically clinical hypersensitivity to any sensation of pain for weeks or even months after. That's Australia's way of saying, don't screw with me, asshole, or I'll send you a saltwater crocodile to fuck you up and shove jellyfish up your urethra while force-feeding your wife eucalyptus leaves. That'll teach you to not use the word crikey in a projective contest. Australia is very cold-blooded if you're not careful. And now we move on to someone amazing. Sir Garnet Wolseley. Field Marshal Sir Garnet Wolseley, the first Viscount Wolseley, is a man who completely embodied the civilization v. ultra-domination martial brutality of Victorian England so hard that the only two things in life that made him happy were the Guards Band rendition of God Save the Queen and the act of actively bayoneting enemy warriors to death with his own two hands. A hardcore, one-eyed redcoat officer with a pith hat and a bushy mustache and a monocle. He had a healthy disrespect for anyone who wasn't a respectable, upstanding gentleman, and he was an epic war hero across 4 continents who demolished the enemies of imperialism from Beijing to Pretoria and used a bunch of cringe-worthy words like savages and barbaric at any time he was writing about people of non-English, ethnic, political, or social backgrounds. Unfortunately, he did hate Americans. However, I just finished an epic stint where I wrote about Here's a story of Sir Garnet Wolseley, a once impoverished British boy who rose from ensign to commander and chief of the British Army without ever once paying for a commission, and a man who battled Ashanti warriors in Africa, overthrew a revolution in Canada, stormed fortresses in India, captured forts in China, claimed the Suez Canal for England, captured a Suez King, and got half his face blown off in Burma. A man so efficient, cold-bloodedly calculating, and thorough in the destruction of his enemies that his phrase, "It's all Sir Garnet," became popular for British. Born in Dublin, Ireland in 1833, Wolseley's father had spent decades serving as a major in the 25th Regiment of Foot. Despite his prestigious military heritage, Wolseley's dad had married a woman 25 years younger than him and died while Garnet was 14. leaving him to provide for his mom and his 7 younger siblings pretty much by himself. He actually had to wait till he was 19 to receive the Duke of Wellington's appointment. He was initially assigned to a regiment in England, but was too poor to pay to travel from England to London. So instead of taking that assignment, he just immediately requested a transfer to a regiment on active duty in the Burman War. He finally got to China in 1860, where he stormed Qing Dynasty Chinese fortifications as part of the Second Opium War. He helped capture the Taku forts and was present, but did not participate when the British and French armies captured Beijing and looted the emperor's palace. For the next couple of years, things got pretty quiet, so he got married to a blonde Englishwoman who had the same bodily proportions as the Venus de Milo, and wrote a book that was basically everything a soldier needed to know in order to be successful in the army. All the good stuff and the bad stuff. Before long, Lieutenant Colonel Garnet Wolseley was like the SEAL Team 6 of violently enforcing the will of the British Empire on her subjects. In 1873, he was deployed to West Africa, where a particularly warlike tribe called the Ashanti were attacking British Protectorate of Ghana. He showed up, totally lied to the local British media about what direction he would be marching, and then surprised the Ashantis by ramming the bayonets of the Black Watch up their butts from the other direction. He then built bridges and laid telegraph lines through a couple hundred miles of undiscovered inland Africa, almost died of malaria, beat the Ashanti in 3 battles, burned their capital to the ground, forced their chief to sign a treaty agreeing to pay England 50,000 ounces of gold, stopped doing human sacrifices, and opened their kingdom for trade. After this came another slow period where Wolseley didn't do so much. He just was an ambassador to South Africa, that was all. After years of being pissed off for a variety of pretty understandable reasons, in 1882 there was a military coup in Egypt that was aimed at overthrowing the British and Turkish control in the area. Once again, he was called in. He immediately made arrangements for 40,000 men and 41,000 tons of supplies to be shipped from locations in India, Europe, and Africa, met up in Egypt, and assembled in the largest British expeditionary force in the history of the empire. Once again, he told the media, and then proceeded to totally not do that. Tel Kabir was supposed to be unbreachable. The Egyptian dictator had 26,000 riflemen and dozens of artillery behind fortified stone walls and 4 miles of trenches surrounded by wide-open desert with zero cover. He had 11,000 operational infantry and 2,000 cavalry and 61 cannon in Wolseley's team. But while surveying the enemy positions, he noticed one important thing. The Egyptians didn't keep their advanced posts staffed at night. So in the dead of the night on September 12th of 1882, Garnet Wolseley marched his entire army 5.5 miles through featureless desert, used Royal Navy navigators brought up from the ships to guide them using stars so they didn't get lost. Then while it was still dark, the British snuck up on Tel Kabir, and the defenders were woken by the horrible screams of 3 Scottish Highlander regiments bearing down on them with fucking bayonets and broadswords. The Egyptian lines wavered, and attacks from Wolseley's Irish, English, and Indian regiments broke their lines. The next morning, the Queen received a telegram from General Wolseley. The war in Egypt is over. Send no more men from England. He was already in Cairo, and the rebel Egyptian leader was in custody. He then, a few years after this, was 52 years old and commanded an expedition to the Sudan to try and rescue Chinese Gordon, while he was assigned in Khartoum by forces of the Mahdi. He never forgave himself for his failure, though, and although considering all the other crap he accomplished, it seems like you'd be able to let one thing slide. Either way, later in life, he had his baron title upgraded to Viscount, was part of the Department of the Army Commission that suggested, fuck yes, we need more machine guns in the Army, hunted foxes in Ireland, wrote a biography of the Duke, and was Commander-in-Chief in the British Army for 6 years. He died peacefully in 1913. I researched that and it was supposed to be part of Australia, but apparently was not, so I apologize. Now, whatever happens there was just crazy. We're going to move on to this crazy, crazy critter called the Komodo dragon, which I'm sure my friend Kirsty totally knows about because, well, I swear I've heard about a Komodo dragon as a kid. Now, the Komodo dragon. Yes, I know. Lol. I totally screwed up on that one, didn't I? Kirsty's lolling me. Great. screwed up.